Welcome to Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we're whisking you away on a bit of a fragrant quest. We're doing a deep dive into the really captivating story of perfume.
Yeah, and forget just, a pleasant smell.
Right, we're unbottling centuries of history, art, and actually a surprising amount of science and ingenuity to understand what makes a perfume.
Well, perfume.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. A single sniff can just transport you, can it?
Totally.
Maybe to a garden or like a bustling market. Even ancient civilizations. It's almost like a time machine for your nose.
A scented time machine. I like that.
And that's our journey today, really, exploring how this olfactory magic actually happened. We'll trace it all the way from its earliest kind of smoky origins up to the complex blends we know now.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. The word itself, perfume. It has a story, doesn't it?
It really does. It comes from the Latin perfuma,
Meaning?
to smoke through.
To smoke through.
Mm.
Wow. That really paints a picture, doesn't it? It does. It tells you it wasn't about fancy bottles at first.
No.
It was about fragrant smoke, rising up from burning incense, woods, resins, often as an offering, a ritual.
So deeply connected to early civilizations, then.
Oh, absolutely. We find traces, fragrant fingerprints, you could say, in places like Mesopotamia, ancient Cyprus, Egypt, the Indus Valley, maybe even ancient China.
A global phenomenon even back then.
And then later it was refined, really taken to another level by the Romans and the Islamic world.
And speaking of those early days, we have to talk about Tapputi.
Oh, definitely, Tapputi. If you're listing pioneering chemists, she has to be there.
From Mesopotamia.
Yes, second millennium BC. Considered one of the world's first recorded chemists.
Yeah.
She was a perfume maker. Imagine, thousands of years ago, distilling flowers, oils, calamus root.
It's incredible. And the text suggests she wasn't just mixing things randomly.
Not at all. There was real technique involved. Things like repeated distillation, suggesting a focus on purity, refinement. Ideas we still see in perfumery today.
It really makes you wonder about the level of knowledge back then.
It does. And we also see archaeological evidence from the Indus civilization, 3300 BC to 1300 BC, suggesting they had their own relationship with fragrances too.
Okay, but get this for actual preserved perfumes. Cyprus.
Yes, Pyrgos, Cyprus. Archaeologists found what they believe are the world's oldest surviving perfumes, over 4,000 years old.
4,000? Imagine holding a piece of that history.
Exactly. And they didn't just find the perfume traces. They found the whole setup, a 300 square meter ancient perfumery.
Wow.
With stills, mixing bowls, little bottles, all preserved, like a fragrant snapshot of the Bronze Age.
And what were they using back then?
Things you might expect, actually. Herbs, spices like almond, coriander, myrtle, bergamot, conifer resin too, and flowers, of course. It gives us a tantalizing sniff of their world.
And didn't they try to recreate one?
They did. For an exhibition in Greece, they recreated an ancient perfume called Rhodo, based on rose.
So people could actually smell antiquity.
Literally inhale the past. Yeah. It just shows how fundamental smell is to human experience. And the Romans and Greeks were also masters at extracting scents from nature flowers, woods, seeds, roots, even saps and gums.
Okay, here's a fact that blew my mind. The temple in Elis.
Ah, yes, the temple to Athena, near Olympia.
They mixed saffron, precious saffron, into the wall plaster.
They did. And apparently it kept the inside of the temple fragrant for 500 years.
5 centuries. That's unbelievable longevity. It makes you reconsider what long-lasting means.
It really does. It speaks volumes about their understanding of how to make scents endure.
Okay, let's jump forward a bit. The Islamic Golden Age. A huge period for science and learning.
And for perfume, absolutely. You have the 9th century Arab chemist Al-Kindi.
Right. The book of the chemistry of perfume and distillation.
Exactly. This wasn't just recipes, it was systematic. Over 100 detailed recipes for fragrant oils, aromatic waters, plus descriptions of equipment like the Olympic still. He was laying down a scientific foundation.
Over 100 recipes. That's serious work. And it wasn't just about smelling good, was it? He looked at medicinal uses, too.
Yes, finding substitutes for costly ingredients. Very practical chemistry.
And then came Ibn Sina, or Avicenna.
Ah, Avicenna. 11th century, a Persian polymath. His big breakthrough was figuring out how to extract oils from flowers using steam distillation.
Starting with roses.
Starting with the rose, yes. This was revolutionary because it allowed for much more delicate scents than just crushing flowers or soaking them in oil.
So you could capture the really subtle notes.
Precisely. The ethereal quality of a single flower. It led to things like rose water becoming widely used, a real turning point for the art of perfume. It just broadened the possibilities enormously.
And this knowledge, this expertise, it didn't just stay in the East.
No, it gradually spread to Western Europe, especially through Islamic influence in Spain and southern Italy.
Al-Andalus.
Right. Islamic Spain became a major hub for perfume production. These scents were traded all over. And culturally, perfumes were important there too, used in devotion, but also, interestingly, by Andalusian women for courtship,
Fragrance as personal expression, even then.
reflecting maybe greater social freedoms for women at that time. Meanwhile, even earlier in Italy, monks in Florence were recording perfume recipes back in 1221.
Monks. Interesting.
And then around 1370, you get Hungary water.
Ah, yes. For Queen Elizabeth of Hungary. Important because it was alcohol-based, right?
Exactly. One of the first major alcohol-based perfumes. Alcohol acts as a lighter carrier, lets the scent diffuse differently. A whole new experience compared to heavy oils.
A real game changer, allowing for those lighter, maybe more volatile scents.
Definitely. Then fast forward to the Renaissance. Italy really embraced perfumery. Which brings us to René the Florentine.
Catherine de' Medici's personal perfumer.
The very same. When Catherine moved from Italy to France to marry the king in the 16th century, René came too, bringing his secrets.
And the story goes his lab had a secret passage to her rooms.
That's the legend. Adds a bit of drama, doesn't it? Protecting those valuable formulas like state secrets.
It really does. A secret scented passage.
Thanks to René and that Italian influence, France quickly became the European hotspot for perfume and cosmetics.
And by the 18th century, the south of France, Grasse especially,
Became the engine room. Ideal climate for growing flowers, roses, jasmine, lavender, cultivated on a massive scale. A major industry was born.
And we also get Eau de Cologne around this time.
Yes, originally Aqua Admirabilis, created in 1693 by an Italian barber, Giovanni Paolo Feminis.
But popularized by his nephew, Farina, in Cologne, Germany. That's the name.
Exactly. And those early colognes were all about bright, fresh citrus notes. A very different vibe.
Lighter, more invigorating.
Yes, quite distinct, often unisex actually. It wasn't until later that cologne started being used by big houses to mean a lighter concentration of their main perfume.
Like a diluted version.
Sort of, yeah. And by that 18th century mark, you had Grasse, Sicily, Calabria in Italy, all becoming key centers for growing these aromatic plants, the raw materials powerhouse.
Okay, so we've traced the history. Let's talk about the language we use now. Parfum, Eau de Parfum, Eau de Toilette.
It can be confusing.
It can seem like alphabet soup, but fundamentally it's about the concentration of the aromatic compounds, the smelly stuff in the solvent, which is usually alcohol and maybe some water.
Right, so Perfume is the strongest.
Generally, yes, parfum or extra. Highest concentration, typically 15% to maybe even 40%. Aromatic compounds usually means richer, lasts longer. You get more of those deep base notes coming through.
Okay, then Eau de Parfum, EDP.
A bit less concentrated, maybe 10% to 20%. Still quite potent.
Then Eau de Toilette, EDT.
Lighter again, around 5% to 15%. Often brighter, more about those initial top notes you smell right away.
And Eau de Cologne, EDC.
Usually around 3% to 8%. Lighter, fresher, often citrus heavy in that traditional style. And then there's Eau Fraiche, which is the lightest, 3% or less. Very subtle. But these percentages aren't set in stone, are they? It's not like there's a global perfume police force measuring every bottle.
No, exactly. The terminology is, let's say, a guideline. Different houses might use slightly different concentrations for the same category. An EDP from one brand might technically be less concentrated than an EDT from another.
So it's more about the intended character.
Precisely. It's about the perfumer's intention and the overall feel of the fragrance, rather than hitting an exact number.
That's really good to keep in mind. So seeing Eau de Parfum doesn't automatically mean it's the strongest thing out there compared to everything else.
Right. And it gets even more complex because sometimes fragrances with the same name but different concentrations aren't just diluted versions of each other.
They actually change the formula.
Often, yes. Perfumers might tweak the balance of ingredients. An EDT might be formulated to be sparklier, emphasizing top notes, while the EDP version might beef up the heart and base for more richness and longevity.
Like Chanel No. 5. The different versions smell related, but distinct.
That's a perfect example. The Parfum, EDP, EDT, even the old Eau de Cologne version. They each have their own nuance, their own personality, different facets of the same idea.
Like variations on a theme in music.
Good analogy. And then you see terms like intense or extreme.
Which might just mean a different scent profile, not necessarily stronger concentration.
Could be either or both. It adds another layer. You really have to smell them to know.
Okay, and what about the whole perfume for women, cologne for men thing?
Historically, yes, that was the marketing. And it still kind of lingers in how people talk about it. But technically, those terms relate to concentration, not gender.
Right, so a man could easily wear an eau de parfum, even if some might casually call it cologne.
Absolutely. And remember, original eau de cologne like 4711 were those fresh, citrusy things, often unisex, not necessarily linked to a stronger perfume version.
It was its own style.
Exactly. The idea of cologne, meaning a lighter version of a main fragrance, came later. And eau de parfum as a popular category is actually more recent. It kind of hit that sweet spot.
Between the brightness of EDT and the richness of extra.
Yeah, offering good presence and decent longevity. It's become a really common concentration now.
And then gender lines in fragrance are blurring more now anyway, aren't they?
Definitely. Much more focus on personal preference in the scent itself, less on strict for him or for her labels, which is great.
Okay, let's dig into the ingredients themselves, the aromatic sources. Where does all this amazing smell come from?
Well, overwhelmingly, the plant kingdom is the star. Nature gives us this incredible palette.
From all different parts of the plant.
All sorts. Bark, like cinnamon. Flowers, obviously rose, jasmine. Fruits, especially citrus rinds for those zesty oils. Leaves, think lavender or patchouli. Resins, like frankincense, myrrh. Roots, iris, rhizomes for that powdery smell. Vetiver for earthiness. Seeds, like tonka bean or coriander. And woods, of course, sandalwood, cedarwood. It's a botanical treasure chest.
Nature's own perfumer's organ. It's amazing. And then animal sources. That sounds a bit unexpected.
It does, and their use has changed a lot. Historically, things like ambergris.
From sperm whales, right?
Yes. And castoreum from beavers, civet from civet cats, hyraceum from rock hyraxes, honeycomb, and musk, originally from musk deer. These were prized for adding depth, warmth, sensuality. They often acted as fixatives, too, making other scents last.
But we don't really use those much anymore, do we, for ethical reasons?
Largely no. Ethical concerns, plus the development of excellent synthetic alternatives, have really reduced the use of natural animal ingredients. Musk, in modern perfume, for instance, is almost entirely synthetic white musk.
Okay. And besides plants and animals, any other natural sources?
Yeah, things like lichens, oak moss is a classic, gives that earthy forest floor smell, and even some seaweed distillates, though they're less common.
And then the lab, synthetic aroma compounds.
Ah, yes. This was the big revolution, starting in the late 19th century, creating scent molecules in the lab. Things like vanillin, the smell of vanilla, or coumarin with its hay-like scent, ionones giving violet notes.
It opened up totally new possibilities, right? Scents that don't even exist in nature.
Exactly. Or scents that are very difficult or unsustainable to get from nature. Think of cologne, that synthetic molecule that gives that unmistakable, fresh, ozonic marine note you find in lots of modern scents.
So synthetics aren't just cheap copies.
Not at all. They're crucial tools. They offer consistency, sustainability for rare materials, and entirely new creative avenues. Major companies Givaudan, IFF, Firmenich, Takasago, Symrise, they specialize in creating these aroma chemicals.
So how do naturals and synthetics compare? Is one better?
It's not really about better. They're different. Naturals can vary. A rose from Bulgaria might smell different from one grown in Turkey, depending on soil, weather, harvest time. They're complex mixtures of many molecules.
More nuanced, maybe.
Often, yes. Synthetics are usually much more consistent, often focusing on a single, powerful scent characteristic. Naturals can be very expensive due to harvesting and extraction, but some complex synthetics are costly to produce too.
So it's about the...
Absolutely. The art is in how the perfumer skillfully combines both naturals and synthetics to create something unique and beautiful. They both have vital roles.
Okay, so you have these raw materials. How do you actually get the smell out? The extraction methods.
Right. There are several ways, depending on the material. For delicate stuff that hates heat, you might use maceration or solvent extraction.
Soaking it in a solvent.
Basically, yeah. Using something like hexane or ethanol. The solvent dissolves the fragrant bits, then you evaporate the solvent, and you're left with this waxy stuff called a concrete.
Okay.
There's also supercritical fluid extraction, often using CO2 under pressure. Very high-tech, good at capturing the true scent without much alteration. For things like resins or seeds, you might just soak them in alcohol that gives you a tincture.
And distillation, that sounds more traditional.
It is. Steam distillation is the most common. Pass steam through the plant material, it picks up the volatile oils, you condense the steam, and separate the oil from the water.
Like making essential oils.
Exactly. There's also dry distillation, heating the material directly, which can give smokier notes, and fractionation, which is like super precise distillation to isolate specific molecules.
What about citrus? You just squeeze them, right?
Pretty much. Expression or cold pressing,
Yeah.
just mechanically pressing the peels to release the oils. Simple and effective for citrus.
And that old romantic-sounding one, enfleurage.
Enfleurage. Less common now because it's so labor-intensive.
Mm-hmm.
But it was vital for super delicate flowers like jasmine or tuberose that heat would destroy.
Laying petals on fat.
Yes, purified fat or oil. The fat absorbs the scent over days. You keep replacing the flowers. The scented fat is called a pomade, and then you extract the fragrance from that using alcohol to get an absolute.
Wow. So all these methods give different extracts, absolutes, essential oils, pomades, tinctures.
Right. And the person orchestrating all this, choosing the ingredients, blending them, that's the perfumer, the nose.
A highly trained artist scientist.
Absolutely. They work from a brief, maybe from a fashion house or their own inspiration. They think about the structure, the main sense or heart, the modifiers for nuance, blenders for harmony, fixatives for longevity.
And they sometimes use pre-made blends, fragrance bases.
Yes, modern perfumery often uses bases. They're like pre-built accords or scent building blocks. Helps with consistency and efficiency.
And with all this complexity, can you, like, reverse engineer a perfume, analyze it chemically?
Oh, yes. Techniques like gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, GCMS are very powerful.
GCMS.
Yeah, it separates all the different volatile compounds in the perfume and then identifies them. So you can get a pretty detailed list of ingredients.
So you could copy a perfume.
In theory, you can identify the components.
That's
But knowing the exact quality of each natural ingredient, the exact proportions, the perfumer's subtle touches, that's still challenging. But GCMS is vital for quality control and analysis.
which brings up a tricky question. Copyright. Can you copyright a smell?
Huh. That's a very thorny legal issue. It really varies. In the U.S., generally, no. The argument is often that a scent is functional, not artistic expression in the copyright sense.
But elsewhere.
It's debated. There have been cases in Europe, particularly the Netherlands and France, where courts have occasionally recognized that a unique olfactory creation could potentially have copyright protection. But it's complex and not straightforward. How do you legally define a smell?
It seems very subjective.
It is, which might explain why you see things like numbered perfumery or analogs perfumes sold with numbers, described as being inspired by or in the direction of a famous scent. Especially common in some regions, like former USSR countries.
A way around trademark and potentially fuzzy copyright issues.
Exactly. It's a fascinating legal gray area where art, chemistry, and law intersect.
This has been absolutely fascinating, such a journey. And hey, if you out there are enjoying this deep dive and you want more stories like this from all sorts of fields, definitely hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future explorations here on Tell Me More Stories Told As podcast.
Yeah, plenty more stories to tell. Now, while we love the artistry, we should probably touch briefly on health and environmental aspects too.
Right. Perfume ingredients aren't always totally benign, are they?
No, for some people, certain ingredients, natural or synthetic, can cause issues. Asthma flare-ups, allergies, headaches, skin reactions, even nausea.
Both naturals and synthetics.
Yes, natural essential oils are complex mixtures. Something like linalool, very common, can oxidize and become a skin sensitizer. Citrus oils can contain phenocoumarins that cause photosensitivity, makes your skin react badly to sun. Balsam of Karoo, a natural resin, is a known allergen for quite a few people.
And what about synthetics? Weren't there concerns about some musks?
There have been discussions, yes. Some older nitro musks raised concerns about persistence in the environment and were largely phased out or restricted. Polycyclic musks, which are widely used now, have undergone a lot of safety reviews. The current consensus is that at the levels used in cosmetics, they're considered safe. But it's an area regulators keep an eye on.
And the environment. Does perfume production have an impact?
It can. Those synthetic musks, because they're used in so many things like laundry detergents, do end up in water systems and have been found in human tissues and milk. Long-term ecological effects are still being studied.
And on the natural side?
The demand for things like sandalwood and agar wood rowd has led to serious problems over harvesting, illegal logging, endangering the species. Sustainable sourcing is becoming really critical.
So there are regulations to protect people.
Yes. In the U.S., the FDA has ingredients designated GRAS, generally recognized as safe. In the EU, they mandate labeling of 26 specific fragrance allergens known to be common triggers. Helps people with sensitivities make informed choices.
Good to know. Okay, last practical question. If you love your perfume, how do you keep it smelling good?
Yeah.
Storage matters, right?
Hugely important. Heat, light, and oxygen are the enemies of perfume.
To keep it out of the bathroom windowsill.
Definitely. Best place is cool, dark, stable temperature. Inside a drawer or cupboard, maybe even in its original box. That protects it from light and air.
Fridge. Some people say the fridge.
You can, especially for very precious extracts, but it's not usually necessary for everyday ADPs or EDTs. The main thing is avoiding those big swings in temperature and light. And spray bottles are generally better than open bottles or roller balls as they limit oxygen exposure.
Makes sense. Keep it stable and sealed. And it's amazing there are places like the Osmothèque in France, actual perfume archives.
Yes, dedicated to preserving historical perfumes. Thousands of them, kept under ideal conditions. It's like a library of scents, ensuring these olfactory artworks aren't lost to time.
The Library of Scents, I love that.
It really shows the cultural value we place on fragrance.
So as we wrap up this exploration, it's just so clear, perfume is way more than a nice smell.
Oh, absolutely. It's this incredible tapestry, history, chemistry, botany, art, culture, even a bit of law and intrigue woven together.
From ancient smoky rituals to incredibly sophisticated modern science, that drive to capture and create scent has pushed innovation for millennia.
So next time you smell a fragrance, maybe pause for a second. Think about the journey of those ingredients, the perfumer's skill, the echoes of history, potentially bottled up in there.
Hopefully this chat has given everyone a deeper appreciation for that complex world inside the bottle.
And here's a final thought to maybe leave you with. Think about how powerful our sense of smell is. We often overlook it, but it connects us so directly to memory, emotion, even the distant past. What scents trigger powerful memories for you? What stories might they be telling? That's maybe a fragrant thread for you to follow on your own.
A perfect thought to end on. Until our next adventure on Tell Me More Stories Told Us podcast, keep those senses engaged.
Indeed. Thanks for listening.